Denver Sports presents the Mile High Hockey Podcast with Mike Evans, presented by Fort Comfort Gutters. Now here's your host with the latest on the Burgundy and Blue, Mike Evans.
Hey everybody, welcome into the Mile High Hockey Podcast. I am Mike Evans, and as we sit here right now talking, the Avalanche in what I believe, and I think what Jared Bednar would agree, is their best stretch of hockey of the season. 8-1-1 in their last 10 games. And while the Avalanche have had some other streaks of good hockey, or at least winning hockey during the season, there's something about this recent heater that they've been on that seems to indicate, at least in the eyes of Jared Bednar, that this is the best they've played all season. So why? What makes this one different? Well, I think a couple things. First of all, before they went into this stretch of 6 games playing the likes of the Islanders and Florida, Boston, Dallas, Vegas, Toronto, before they started this stretch, Bednar himself said, this is a big, big challenge for us. It's a big test for us to see where we are as a hockey team. So the fact that they're playing so well during it, that's one reason why Bednar likes this stretch of hockey so much. The other thing that's been obvious in listening to Bedsy is that he feels like maybe for the first time this season, the team has found a buy-in commitment. Now, there's two ways of looking at this. There's one is saying, well, you know, I'm really happy with the hockey team, and I don't think that we have many flaws. There aren't that many holes to fill. That's not what I've heard from Jared Bednar over the last few games. I think he would be honest with you and say that there's still some issues. There's still some concerns. There's still some ways to upgrade this hockey team. But put that aside for a second. It's the way that this current team is playing, that there is more of a buy-in, more of a commitment. He talked at length about how I really like my checking game. He said this after the last couple games. I really like our checking game. I like the way how we got into our opponents. I like the force with which we played. I like the buy-in, the commitment. So when you hear a coach talking like that, you can see that he believes that the team is forming a bit of an identity, and that, you know, for the first half of the season, remember, we just passed the halfway mark of this season, that was something that he felt this team was searching for. That even while there were some stretches of good hockey, winning hockey, maybe he never felt like there was that true sense that everybody was buying into the way that they needed to play, the effort, the work ethic, all that. So during this stretch of hockey, I've sensed in listening and watching Bednar after games talk is that he likes the way his team has responded to this stretch of tough opponents. He likes the fact that there is a consistency now to their game, to their work ethic. And I think the third thing that has him enjoying this recent stretch of hockey is that when you have about 36 games as a backdrop to compare to, when you feel like things are clicking this deep into the season now, as we pass the midway point of the season, you feel like, okay, we've gone through ups and downs in our season, and we're at a point now where we're learning enough about our hockey team. We're adjusting. We're figuring some things out. Some continuity is being formed, and now you see us playing some of our best stretch of hockey. So we'll see what happens with it. They now are getting ready, as we talk right now, where they're getting ready to head out on the road, and they're going to be on the road for a big stretch of hockey. Basically, over the next month, they're going to be on the road most of the time. And it's interesting that when they come off this real heavy road-dominated stretch of games, we're only going to be a couple of months, or excuse me, a couple of weeks away from the trade deadline. So where the Avalanche are right now, it's not about points. It's not about spots in the division. It's not about where they rank in the conference. That stuff will take care of itself. I don't worry about that. But where this team is at right now, it's kind of like we're gathering data. You know, it's a fact-finding expedition that we're on right now. And whether it's this 6-game stretch of good opponents or it's this big stretch of road games coming up, it's a great opportunity to find out what we have as a hockey team, what we like, what we don't like, what we have as a strength, what might be a weakness that we have to go out and adjust to. And it's going to be a fun next couple of months because with the trade deadline coming up around, I think it's March 8th for the NHL trade deadline, you're starting to hear some of the names. Starting to hear some of the names that are out there. Matt Smith and I talked the other day on this Mile High Hockey podcast about Lindholm, the possibility of him being out there. Starting to hear some other names, possibility of as teams start to get to that point, that realization that, we're not going to be a playoff team or we're a borderline playoff team. Hey, maybe we're looking to trade off some pieces. So the Avalanche figure to be active. This is a case where, as much as I like the way the Avalanche are playing, I kind of have to separate it because, man, I love the way the Avalanche, their top guns are playing. I love the way their core is playing. Just the utmost admiration for the way that their best players are playing. They're bringing it seemingly every night, and they're really carrying this hockey team. Still have questions about the supporting cast. Those of you who've been watching this podcast throughout the course of the season, that hasn't changed. I still wonder if they have enough of a supporting cast to be able to go win a Stanley Cup. Ryan Johansson has seen his minutes just gutted. And I think back to when Ryan Johansson was brought here, and there was this automatic reaction that tends to follow pretty much every Avalanche move out there among Avalanche media and some of you fans, that every move that the Avalanche make is a great move. Every move the Avalanche make is going to be great. And I remember when they made the Johansson trade, folks were saying, we got our second-line center. We got our 2C now. We found our guy to replace Kadri. And I'm just like, really? Really? This is the guy that's going to make us forget about Nazem Kadri. This is going to be the second-line center on a team that's going to compete for and hopefully win a Stanley Cup. A guy that Nashville, where he'd been for years, that knew him the best, was willing to move on from him, willing to move him to a division opponent and eat part of his salary. That kind of set up a red flag for me. So now we're watching Ryan Johansson play at a level that, quite frankly, isn't going to cut it. And once again, the Avalanche are in that position of trying to find that second-line center. So they got some work to do. Because while I like the way they're playing right now, it's not about winning the Central Division. It's not about finishing with home ice for the first round of the playoffs. It's not about having the best record in the West. I really, truly don't care about that stuff, because if the Avalanche are built right, then come playoff time, whoever they play, wherever they play, it won't matter. Conversely, they could have a top seed, and there's still issues with this hockey team. As I look at their ability to win a Stanley Cup, I can't stress this enough. This is not about what it takes to reach 100 points. This is not what it takes to win the division. This is not what it takes to be one of the top 3 teams in the West. It's about what it takes to win a Stanley Cup. And I know what a Stanley Cup winning team does. You know what a Stanley Cup winning team does, because it's fresh in our memory from just a couple of years ago. And does anybody out there, loyal viewer, think that we're looking at a team right now that is a Stanley Cup winner? I don't. So there's still work to be done, but they're playing well, they're playing hard, and it's resulting right now in good hockey. The other thing, I wrote about this at denversports.com. Want to give a stick tap to Devon Toews, because you talk about leadership, you talk about culture. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Devon Toews, who stepped in as the de facto captain with Gabe Landeskog out, more on him in a second. But think about, and it's not a coincidence, it just isn't. The Avalanche on this 8-1-1 run that they're on began immediately following that December 19th loss to the Chicago Blackhawks in Chicago, the lowly Blackhawks. Avalanche lost that game. At that point, dropped the record to 19-14-2, nothing special. And Toews called out the team. Well, not the whole team, but said, we got guys here who aren't playing the way they're supposed to. We got guys who aren't playing up to the standard that this Avalanche organization has. He even went so far as to say there are 14 guys that are doing it right, 6 aren't. And those are the kind of comments that whenever somebody makes them, you're always like, ooh, how are they going to be received? Is this going to cause a problem in the locker room? Is it going to cause a riff? Is it going to cause a division? And did he go too far? Was he too honest? Clearly, and I was never worried about it when he first said the comments, and it's been backed up with the way they've been playing. When a guy like Devon Toews, who's a terrific player, but more importantly is so respected as a pro, so respected as a leader. Not a big talking guy, but one of those guys that if he's going to say something like that, he must really mean it. And if he's going to say it, we better pay attention, we better listen, and we better do something about it. I tell you, it's why when you look at the most successful teams and we talk about culture and we talk about leadership, I think one of the biggest mistakes that are made is the idea that it has to come from the coach. Yeah, the coach can put in sort of the parameters of what he wants the culture to look like. But that's a living, breathing thing. And if you think it's just simply a matter of the coach taking these athletes like wind up, wooden soldiers, toy soldiers, and getting them to do the coach's bidding, it doesn't work that way. Sure, the coach can say, this is what I want the culture to look like, but it has to be implemented by the players. And put it this way, if Jared Bednar, after that same loss to Chicago, had come out and said exactly what Taves said, are you convinced the Avalanche go on an 8-1-1 run after that? I'm not. No knock on Bednar, but he's a coach. It means so much more when it comes from a player, a leader, the de facto captain. And so is it a coincidence that following those comments, the Avalanche have gone 8-1-1? Nope. To me, it's direct cause and effect. Direct cause and effect. And for that, Devon Taves, hey, Nathan MacKinnon is their MVP. Nathan MacKinnon should be the league's MVP. But right now, I think Devon Taves and his role in what this season has become, or at least the patch that we're in right now, might be the second most important Avalanche out there behind Nathan MacKinnon. Last thought, Gabe Landeskog. I got mixed feelings about watching Gabe out on the ice skating the other day. On one hand, it's awesome, right? Who can't wait for that day when Gabe Landeskog is back playing for the Avalanche? Terrific two-way player, leader. My goodness, what a absence. His absence has been felt. But I just kind of wonder what the message is being delivered and how it should be received by Avalanche fans. Gabe Landeskog out on the ice. The Avalanche came out and said when he had before the season began that he would be out for the regular season. The Avs recently have said they're, quote, cautiously optimistic that he could return by the playoffs. When he was out on the ice for the little twirl, Jared Bednar afterwards said this was all part of the plan. All right, so what is the plan? And what's the message being sent here, and how should Avalanche fans react to it? In some respects, I don't know if Avs fans are being treated fairly here, and let me explain. Because if Gabe Landeskog, who is on long-term injured reserve, if he comes back just for the playoffs, fine. You don't have to worry about his salary. Nothing has to be done. You're good. But you're telling me for a guy who hasn't played in 2 full years with a injury that and an operation that no NHL player has ever come back from yet, you're telling me the first time he plays is going to be in the playoffs? Really? That seems unrealistic. That seems unfair. But from a salary standpoint, you could do it that way. But if you say, well, wait a minute, if he's close to coming back, wouldn't it be good to maybe let him have like 10 games or so during the end of the regular season to kind of get, back into the flow so he's ready to go 100% or 100 miles an hour for the playoffs? Sure, you could, but for a guy who's on long-term injury reserve, if you bring him back during the regular season, you gotta cut players. You got to cut salary. Or the other thing is, are you telling your fan base, hey, there's a possibility Gabe could come back, and if he comes back before the regular season's over, it impacts our ability to go out and make moves, make trades, add payroll for the rest of the season. So is this the cynic in me? Sorry, cynical me, but it's me. Part of the cynic in me is that, well, by dangling that carrot that Gabe could return, does that give the front office a pass, ownership a pass, to not have to go out and spend more money as we approach the trade deadline. Because otherwise, I kind of feel for Avalanche fans. You went through this last year. Is he or is he not? Is he going to play? He's out there on the ice. He's going through drills. Hey, it looks pretty good. Is he going to be able to play? Oh, it'd be so great to have Gabe back. Oh, he's not coming back. Oh, bummer. We want to do that again? You want to do that again? And get Avs fans thinking, hoping that maybe Gabe can come back and he can't? It's kind of, I don't know. Gabe is so popular. He creates so much emotion among Avalanche fans that you're kind of putting Avs fans through the emotional ringer a little bit. You did it last year, and you might be doing it again. And I just don't think it makes sense for Gabe to come back this year. If he can come back, then he's got to come back and play in the regular season and show that he's ready for the playoffs. That is just unfair and unrealistic to expect a guy who hasn't played in 2 years that he's just going to jump right into playoff hockey and be ready to go with the injury he's had. Plus, the other thing you got to think about too, that as much as Gabe may want to come back, as much as you may want Gabe to come back, there is the matter that after this season, you still have 5 years and about $35 million left on his contract. And this isn't like, hey, Russ, we need you to play financial ball with us. Otherwise, we're going to bench you or cut you. You can't do that in hockey like you can as easily in football. So you got to think about the investment. Gabe's got to think about his career. I love seeing Gabe back on the ice, and I love dreaming about the idea when he's back full speed, charging up and down the ice, hair on fire, glorious hair on fire, by the way, going 100 miles an hour. But it just seems to me like it's unrealistic for him to be able to come back and do it this year. And I don't know if it makes a whole lot of sense to put Avalanche fans, through this emotional roller coaster again. Is he or is he not? That'll do it for this week's version of the Mile High Hockey Podcast. A lot of stuff happening with this team. They head out on the road, and we'll chronicle their road adventures coming up next week. Have a great weekend.